What's good, everybody? Today we're talking about intercepting routes in Next.js. Intercepting routes allow you to load a route from another part of your application within the current layout. This feature is really useful when you want to display the content of a route without the user switching to a different context. So it really helps with user interaction on your site. So let's break this down with a quick example. So a cool way to think about intercepting routes and the use case for them in Next.js. Think about you are on an e-commerce site. So for example, we have Nike.com here, and we're trying to click on these new LeBrons that just came out. So notice when we click on them, we're actually directed to a new page. A good feature or a good use case for intercepting routes in Next.js in this type of scenario would be just opening a modal that shows the shoes and the details. So that will basically show the shoe detail page in a modal so that a user won't have to constantly hit, forward and back when trying to look through products. All right, so now that we have the gist of intercepting routes, let's continue on in the documentation. So for example, when clicking on a photo in a feed, which is basically what we just talked about with our Nike.com example, you can display the photo in a modal overlaying the feed. So not directing the user to the actual detailed page of whatever they clicked on, but just showing a quick modal that doesn't interrupt their flow. In this case, Next.js intercepts the /photo123 route, max URL, and overlays it over feed. So this is what this image below is showing an example of. So basically what we just talked about. However, when navigating to the photo by clicking a shareable URL, so if you copy and paste that URL and share it to a different page, or if you refresh the page, the photo page should render instead of the modal. No route interception should occur. Intercepting routes in Next.js can be defined using a convention similar to the relative path convention, but for route segments. So what does this mean? You have a few different methods that you can match segments in Next.js for your intercepting routes. So if you have a route segment that's on the same level and you want to intercept it, you can use 2 parentheses before the directory name and then a dot. If you have a segment that's one level above, you can use 2 dots, and so on and so forth for 2 levels above and going all the way to the root app directory. So for example, going on with the photo example that we started above in the documentation, let's say we have a feed directory or feed segment that's declared, and we have a photo segment that's declared. So if we want to intercept the photo segment from within the feed segment, we would have to put the 2 parentheses and 2 dots, because remember, we're inside of the feed segment. This is not on the same level as the photo. So we would have to go out the feed segment folder, and then we'll have access to the photo segment. So hopefully that makes sense. So in this example above in the documentation, right, we have a feed segment that we declared, or a feed directory, and a photo directory. And inside of feed, we declared a parallel route. Remember, parallel routes use the @ symbol, so we have a modal parallel route right here. And inside of that, we have a intercepting route for our photo segment. So notice how they're using 2 dots instead of, what was the convention that we used if we wanted to go up one more layer from there? We want to go 2 levels above, right? So why are they using 2 dots instead of the four things that we just saw above? Well, remember, the convention only works for route segments. In this case, the parallel route at modal is not a route segment, it is a slot. So it's an invisible wrapper, so it's not counted when we're trying to access or intercept our route. So this is why they're only using the 2 dot convention to only go 1 layer above. So that's a good thing to know, keep in your head. So in the above example, the path to the photo segment can use the 2 dot matcher, since modal is a slot and not a segment. So basically what I just told you. This means that the photo route is only 1 segment level higher despite being 2 file system levels higher. So remember, can't stress this enough, intercepting routes uses the route segment file system and not the file system that you're typically used to seeing. So that's something that's just really good to know. I know that was a mouthful, a lot to digest, so the best way to learn is to hop into it with the code example. So let's go ahead and start with this. So consider the following UI pattern, where a user can open a login modal from a layout using client-side navigation or access a separate login page. So to begin, let's go ahead and create a slot or a parallel route for our auth. So let's just go ahead and follow this example to a T. And if you pull down the repo on the branch named Intercepting Routes in GitHub, I'll put that link in the description. You'll see that I made 2 components, a login form and a modal component. just so we can get all that work out the way. We don't want to waste time watching me code stuff. Again, it is a non-functional form, but it's just, UI based is something actually pretty that we can actually see working. All right, so we have two new components that we already have, login form and modal. So let's go ahead and create our slot. And remember, to create a parallel route or a slot, you have to put an @ symbol in front of your directory name. So we're just going to follow that example to a T. And then we need to make a login directory. There we go. And then we also want to go ahead and make a separate login route. So outside of the parallel route that we have, let's go ahead and create a login route. And then inside of here, let's do page.tsx. Oops. IntelliJ has been going really slow for me today. Or at least it feels like sluggish. I need to fix something. Let me see, export default function page. Okay, so now we have our initial login page. And inside of our page, we're going to go ahead and copy this flow. It's going to be a little bit different naming wise, but it's going to be the same. So we're going to return. Let's go ahead and do this. Let's put a div in here, and then we'll do login form that we made. Again, if you want to follow along with this exactly, the code is in GitHub in this video description. So now we have our login page going, right? And then going back to our parallel route, remember we need to have a default.tsx. Let's go ahead and put that in here, because we will get a 404 page error, which is something that we don't want when the page can't render or when the app refreshes. Boom. And then inside of our off slots or our parallel route, well, before we even get into here, let's run the app. So remember, to run the app, have your editor configured to run it, or you just do npm run dev in your terminal. And now if we refresh the page, our root page should be hello world, which is what we're seeing here. And now if we navigate to /login, we should see our form coming in successfully. There we go. Again, it's not, formatted pretty enough, but, we see a form, we see the fields. Again, this doesn't work. We don't have any submit logic. We're just trying to see what an actual form will look like. So our login route does work. So sanity check complete. So let's go ahead and continue moving on. So we just added our default.tsx file into our parallel route slot off to prevent the 404 errors that we saw in the last video. Again, if you haven't watched that, go ahead and watch that. All right, so inside the slot, we're going to intercept our /login route by updating the folder. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to add the convention. So following what we know, let's go ahead and turn this into an intercepted route. So we have to add in our parentheses. And in this case, we're going to do just one dot, because login is on the same level as this login. Remember, it only works for route segments. So in this case, login is a route segment here, and the login segment in the root is also a route segment. We don't count parallel routes as segments, so it's only going to be one dot and not two. So let's go ahead and refactor this. We're going to go ahead and copy this stuff over. Let's see, login page. Let's go ahead and add a page in here. Again, our naming is going to be different from that example, but it'll be basically the same stuff. Let's see, export default function page. And then let's go ahead and return. Actually, when we need those, we'll just do modal. We're going to return our modal component that we created. Let's go ahead and import that guy and our login form. So now we have this set up successfully. Didn't import for some reason. There we go. Boom. Now that we have all of this done, the convention used, let's go ahead and read these good to knows. The convention used to intercept the route depends on your file system structure. Remember, like we said, our parallel route is not considered a route segment. So technically these two route segments, login and login, are on the same layer. So we don't have to use two dots. We treat it as they're on the same segment layer. All right. So now we should be able to leverage our Next.js router to open and close the modal. So let's go ahead and add this to our layout component. So let's add our parallel route first. Let's go into our route layout and add in our auth. And then we'll go ahead and copy that as well. Put that in there. And then we'll do it like this. Actually, we'll just copy all of this. There we go. So something like that. And then we need to import the next link. Again, we'll start playing around with these like next specific components in a later video. This is just so we can get the gist of this specific concept. Pacific Ocean. All right. So now that we've done that, let's continue on in the example. So we have our route layout configured successfully. Now when the user clicks the link, the modal will open instead of navigating to the login page. However, when we refresh or the page initially loads, navigating to /login will take the user to the main login page. So let's go ahead and start here. All right, so hopping back into our code, before we even try to run this example, make sure you stop your app. Remember, in our last video, we talked about any changes that we add to our route layout, specifically with our parallel routes. We are going to need to reset our app. So we added a new parallel route, so our auth route. So we want to go ahead and stop our app if it's running and go ahead and reset it. And another thing, go ahead and add another default.tsx into your route, the app route. So just to prevent any possible 404 errors that may pop up since we're dealing with parallel routes. And also, just to be on the safe side, I added another default.tsx route into our login page. Even though this probably isn't needed, it's just good to be on the safe side if we want to expand on this a little bit more in the future. So default.tsx into our intercepted login route, and then a default.tsx into our app route. So now that we have all of those things in place, we should be able to go ahead and run our app. And then let's go ahead and open this bad boy up. And once that loads, we have a button here. So if we click login, we would expect that our modal is opened up and not the actual login page. So let's go ahead and see. And you can see here, this is our modal that was opened up, which is what we want. We can press close. So that actually moves us on to the next step in our documentation. So where are we at? So closing the modal. We already have that set up in our modal component. So if you pull it down the repo, we already had this wrapper or this logic set up to close the modal whenever you click the X button. So we click that, and you can see here, it routes us back to our route. And then if we actually navigate to /login, we actually get the login page, which is exactly what we want out here. So there you guys have it. Intercepting routes in Next.js. It's cool to see how what we just learned, parallel routes, can actually be used to help us learn an entirely new concept this week with intercepting routes. Full circle moment, y'all. Brick by brick, taking baby steps. And the cool part is we've barely scratched the surface of Next.js. So if you haven't already, hit that like button. If you don't understand some of the information, leave a comment and I'll try to get to it as fast as I can. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Definitely want to continue to make the community grow, especially as we move into 2025. But as always, y'all, I appreciate y'all stopping by, showing love. Till next time, peace out.